Hello, sunshine. I'm Alexi, Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This week, we'll be talking, MLS Cup and the champions that we have. Let's see, what else? The Unforgivable, UEFA Champions League, some U.S. men's national team. I'll be fielding your calls and questions and concerns when it comes to Ask Alexi, the Big Short, and much, much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you on this, what for me is December 13th at around 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night in the city of Doha, Qatar. And for you is also Monday, December 13th, but much more so in the morning. How you doing, my friend?
I am doing well. Boy, you're still there, huh?
I am still here. This will be the last pod that we do. I leave here in a couple of days. I appreciate everyone allowing me to do this from afar. And once again, apologize if there are any type of audio issues. We've been pretty good. And Luis has done a good job of cobbling this together, even though I come to you from Qatar. And so the trip to Qatar continues on. Since last we spoke, done all sorts of things, Mosse. Let's see. Today we spent the morning at the falconry facility. Falconry is a huge thing over here in Qatar. They breed falcons and then they send them out and have competitions for the fastest falcon in terms of the falcon goes after the prey. So that's a big sport, I guess, if you want to call it that over here. So that was amazing to see what they are doing along the lines of the things we've already seen when it comes to the Arabian horses and the camels. We did some camel racing yesterday. We finished up today interviewing a Qatari metalhead who a musician here, and talking about how, the metal genre, which is right up my alley, is a huge thing over here for him and in Qatar. So we're all over the map. We still got some things to do when it comes to, slice of life type of stuff. And again, I think I've explained this before, but we are doing these things ahead of time. They will be packaged and you will see them next year at the World Cup. But and it becomes very, very apparent when you're here on the ground. This is a small World Cup in that it is this bubble in Doha, and everybody's going to be here. Everybody's coming here, and there are going to be limited resources. And we thought we'd get ahead of the game here when it comes to packaging some of these things and getting them done. There will be lots of people that are doing the same types of things. We went to the dunes. We did dune buggies, which was awesome. So there's a lot of different things that we have done. I've had a really good time. It's been fun, but I'm certainly ready to get back home and back into it. We also the other day went to the Qatar UAE match, and Qatar completely just ran over them. It was 5-0 at halftime, and they just rode it out for the rest of the game. Beautiful, beautiful night, beautiful stadium. The home team won. Everybody was screaming and yelling. This is their big rival with UAE, so they were feeling very, very happy about that. But we obviously had seen Qatar play this summer in the Gold Cup as an invited guest, so we knew a whole lot about them, and Afif and these types of players that we saw star this summer over there in the U.S. Now we saw them here. So it's been a fun and eventful week so far. How you doing?
Doing well. Qatar now face Algeria in these semifinals, by the way. Tunisia, Egypt is the other semi. So tune into those on Fox Sports. On the television front, I don't know where to begin, my friend. I have a lot this week.
Okay.
I watched the last batch of episodes of Money Heist, which were released recently on Netflix. I thought they were very good. Great.
Hold on. These are, because I've kind of passed over them, but you're saying that these are worth it, right? Because these are just episodal. They take one heist every episode, a different type of heist. And is it documentary or is it drama?
It's a drama, and no, there have been two big heists that the show spans these two different heists. It's a lot of time spent actually orchestrating each heist. Great use of the Coldplay song "Fix You" in the finale.
Okay, all right, but it's worth the time, you think?
It's entertaining, a little ridiculous at times, but entertaining.
Like
I then watched Curb Your Enthusiasm last night, which was fine. and the season finale of Succession, which was absolutely incredible, wrapping up another terrific season. That is my favorite show on television. I love watching it so much. But the highlight of my life the last couple of weeks has been the Beatles Get Back, which I don't even want to call it a documentary. It's more of a reality show. I cannot believe something like this exists. I am bursting with thoughts. I know we can't spend too much time on it. We got to move on to the soccer, unfortunately, because I could talk about this thing for hours. I found it absolutely fascinating and engrossing. I loved it. So now I'm done. We can finally talk about it if you have any thoughts that you haven't said yet on the pod.
Wow. Okay. I didn't realize that it was going to resonate like this with you. I know you're into music and everything, but still, I'm older than you, and it's not that the Beatles aren't, that don't resonate with multiple generations. But so what was it? Was it the dynamic that was on display there for these people that we have that are idols and icons and legends of music? And because for me, that's what was interesting, was the interplay between everybody. I think I said this when we talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago. I think that Paul McCartney came out of it as the alpha male, the leader of that group that at the time that this was recorded, they were falling apart. And so that was fascinating to see his persona and how he behaved. I thought that, like I said, John Lennon and Yoko Ono really actually came out much better than the narrative that's out there. Ringo was just kind of in the background, didn't speak a whole lot. But when he did, I thought it was important, but it was few and far between when he did. And so he was just kind of along for the ride. And I think George Harrison just had one foot out the door and was in a different world.
Yeah, McCartney, how domineering he was at that point was interesting to me. The degree to which Lennon had sort of checked out, you get the feeling that a few years earlier, he would have been the more dominant figure. But by that point, he was sort of checking out. He was doing a lot of drugs. And although Yoko came off fine, she was just sitting there minding her own business. The degree to which her and John Lennon had basically become one person at that point, it was like this package deal. I mean, she's sitting right there the entire time. So I can see how that would have gotten a little bit awkward for the other band members. But yeah, the George Harrison thing, I almost came away thinking that the driving force for the breakup of this band ultimately was him wanting to escape the shadow of the other two and feeling like he was a better musician than they gave him credit for.
Yeah, I mean, when you have, 4 songwriters in the band, but obviously from the prolific nature of Lennon and McCartney and what they did, yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard for them all, and to carve out your own little niche and to have these other 2 massive songwriters when it came to Lennon and McCartney, and if you're George Harrison wanting your songs, and his style was very, very different, and you can hear it in his songs. Yeah, he probably wanted to go some different places and wanted to do things on his own. But to your point, yeah, I mean, I think it's it's probably too long. It certainly could have been edited, but maybe that's part of the point, is that all of this footage existed, and it's amazing. And to see them basically write songs in front of you is amazing, to get a peek behind the curtain and kind of see how the sausage is made.
Yeah, Chuck Klosterman on a podcast said something interesting. He said, you reach a certain point lengthwise where what's the difference? You might as well unload everything you got, because if it had been 7 hours instead of 8, would you have really felt differently about it? You cross a point where, it's only people that are really, really interested that are going to watch it. And those people aren't going to mind that extra hour or two. So I was okay with the length. But
I would have liked to have seen if you did put some parameters on it. If you came to, what's his name? Jackson? Is that who did the thing?
Yep,
the director, Peter Jackson, who I know is, notorious for, trilogies and long form type of stuff. But if you came to him and said, you have to go in and edit a 2-hour version of that, I would be interested to see what he would see as essential to keep in.
But then we would have been left with unanswered questions, because you would have had this feeling of, well, we're not getting the whole story here.
Right.
At least this way, I do feel like we saw the raw, uncut, version. We got an idea of what it really was to be around those guys at that period.
It was. It's worth the time, whether you like the Beatles or not, or whether you're into music or not. I think it still does, to your point, draw you in. But you gotta have a bunch of hours to be able to do it. I have a couple of things here. Obviously, I've been running around Qatar, and haven't had a chance to watch a whole lot of stuff, but there's a new Sandra Bullock movie on Netflix called The Unforgivable. She plays a recently released convict who murdered somebody years ago, and so follows her path back to society. And so that's an interesting one. It's always interesting when you see kind of comedic actors, and I know Sandra Bullock is much more than that, but you see them in these roles, and if they can pull it off, or if you're kind of waiting for that other type of character that you often associate with them to show up. And it doesn't, but she does I think an adequate, good job. It's not a great movie. And then I went back into the archives, if you will, of classic movies, and I watched The Big Short, about the financial crisis back in the late aughts, if you will, and the banking and all that kind of stuff. I just love that movie. It's so spot on. And with who's the guy that's in it? Not Johnny Depp, who was married to Angelina Jolie.
Brad Pitt.
Sorry, Brad Pitt. I can't believe I forgot Brad Pitt's name. There's a scene that always sticks with me, and I just think it's brilliant in what it says, and it's so much more about just the specific scene in the movie and the characters. But these two young business financial guys, they do a deal. And you don't have to have seen this movie, but they do a deal. And in the moment that they get this deal, they recognize that this is awesome, and they're so excited, and they're dancing around and they're singing and whooping it up. And Brad Pitt turns to them and says, I'm paraphrasing here, "Don't dance," because he recognizes that while from a business perspective, this is good for them and will make them money, he recognizes the cost. And he starts to lay out some numbers about what they are doing and what they are betting against has real life consequences to people losing money, people losing savings, people losing jobs, all of that kind of stuff. And yet he lays it out perfectly. And he doesn't tell them they can't do the deal. He's not a perfect person, nor is anybody else, but he just says, you're going to do this deal, but you need to have perspective and understand what it ultimately means and the cost to others to benefit you. And I just think it's a wonderful moral of a moment in that movie. So that's a good one. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
Well, we've talked a long time about some different stuff, but that's okay too. All right, ready to light this candle?
Let's do it.
All right, we're going to jump right into it. No State of the Union in the traditional sense. I'll get back to that when I get back to the States. But so the other night, we are 11 hours ahead from you there in Los Angeles. So there's a massive time change here. So I am right now going to bed. You are basically up in the morning over there. So the other night, we had MLS Cup. Came down to Portland hosting NYCFC up there in Portland. There are international broadcast deals that Major League Soccer has done all over the world, including over here. Now, just because the deals are done doesn't mean it's easy to find. And so Stu Holden, who's over here with me, we spent most of the night trying to figure out where we were going to watch this game. There is a sports bar in the hotel that we are in. And unfortunately, they only had BN, I think, and which was not showing it. But we come to find out that we actually, in our rooms, were able to have the, oh gosh, I can't remember what it was called, the Arab Sports Network League One, whatever it was. And so all of a sudden we're sitting there, and it was delayed. The kickoff was delayed and preempted a little bit, and eventually it just shows up there. And the commentary is in Arabic, and we were watching MLS Cup, and this was starting at like 11:30 at night here. So through the night, we watched MLS Cup together from thousands and thousands of miles away on the other side of the earth. And it was fun. It was fun to see that place that we have been so many times, and we're just there a week ago, now hosting MLS Cup. So that was the romance of this league that we know and love. The actual game I thought that ultimately, and for those that watched it, and for those that didn't, I'm not telling you anything. I'm not giving away any secrets. NYCFC ultimately won in penalties. I thought that NYCFC on the day was, by the way, Abu Dhabi Sports 1, your home for Major League Soccer. Thank you, Luis, for hooking me up with that. I couldn't remember what it was. I thought NYCFC was the better team on the day. So I think if you're looking at it that way, I think the better team won in NYCFC. I thought they controlled the ball better. Not that Portland necessarily, part of their game is to oftentimes cede possession. But I thought NYC was the better team, and ultimately the soccer gods agreed with me and smiled upon them, although some nervy moments when Portland came back right at the death of regulation, was able to tie it up and take it into the extra time.
I agree. Generally, you don't search for justice in penalty shootouts, but in this case, I think the right team came away with the trophy. It's interesting because all season long, we talked about the fact that NYCFC was a team that the underlying metrics indicated that they were better than their record. They finished 8th in the Supporter Shield race. They actually, at one point in the second half of the season, dipped below the playoff line, which was incredible. But then with a strong finish, they ended up as the 4 seed in the East. And that identity of being sort of better than the results actually carried over into the playoffs. When you stop and think about it, on balance of play, I thought they were the better team in all 4 playoff games they played, but they only won 2 of them. And twice they had to rely on penalty shootouts. And even against Philadelphia, they needed a late goal against a Philadelphia team that, thanks to a COVID outbreak, was down 11 players, 6 starters. So that they weren't able to totally shake off that identity from the regular season, but still, because of their success in penalty shootouts, they end up with the trophy. I think they're deserved champions this season. So hats off to them. Yeah. So I agree with you. They were the better team. They should have won this game in regulation. It was an absolute stomach punch to surrender that equalizer. But, even though Portland had all the momentum, the crowd behind them, the fact that NYCFC were able to withstand that in the extra time and not concede a goal and make it an evenish extra time, I think even lends more weight to the fact that they were the better team.
All right, listen, a blind squirrel, we know, eventually comes across a nut. You're looking at the blind squirrel over here in terms of my attachment and my prognostication as to what was going to happen with NYCFC. So yeah, I did call it. I called the Pigeons winning, and at times I took some crap for it. This doesn't, like I said, mean that I'm not oftentimes wrong on a lot of things. But in this case, I was right, and it was fun to see them come through. Castellanos scored the first goal, and you're looking at the Golden Boot winner. And so this is nothing new. He finds the back of the net. In that celebration, by the way, NYCFC, while they were over celebrating, one of the Portland Timbers faithful, or at least was one of the Portland Timbers faithful, threw a can of beer and ended up hitting Funky Cold Medina, who went down like he had been shot, but he was okay. He was able to continue. Complete waste of a beer when it comes to Portland, and for a community and city that values their beers so much, I thought it was very, very out of character. You will know that fan was immediately identified and outed, if you will, even by the surrounding people, and was kicked out of the stadium. And he shan't be back anytime soon, shall we say. Don't throw stuff at players. It's don't be a jerk. All right. Doesn't matter if it's a goal or if you hate the player, you hate the team, or your team's losing, stuff like that. Just don't throw stuff. Okay. But then you mentioned the equalizer. Just before the equalizer, there was a moment in the game when Mabiala, who we know had actually scored a couple of very, very important goals for Portland, the center back, he completely wipes out Chanot. Okay. And ultimately they end up scoring. What did you think of this play? And then I'll give you my take.
Well, I agree with you. In real time, referees are human beings. They're influenced by the time, the score, the place, home team versus away team, big team versus small team, star player versus no name. Michael Jordan drives down the lane at the end of the game. He's getting a foul call while some random bloke might not. And we all sort of intuitively understand that. So I do think people that come at you and argue that, no, rules are black and white, and what are you talking about? None of this stuff should come into play. They're just being naive. So I'm with you there. Now, VAR is in theory supposed to mitigate some of that, because now you're getting away from the heat of the moment and looking at several replays. And in theory, at that point, you should come out and make whatever call you think should be made. But I'd be curious to know, I can't go inside the head of a referee, and how much those external factors I mentioned still come into play, even when they're reviewing it on VAR. So you seem to think they still do, which was the crux of your debate with fans.
So, Stu and I were sitting in the hotel watching this on the Abu Dhabi Sports 1 channel, and we had our Chardonnay and some hummus, and we see this. And keep in mind, this is the home team, Portland, sold out stadium, people going back crazy. Okay. At the end of the game, the 95th minute, 94th minute, whatever it ends up being. And they finally get this goal. The place goes bonkers. Everybody screaming and yelling. Right at the death, they were able to tie it. Now they're going to send it into extra time. Everybody's going nuts. Can you imagine if in that moment they had then rescinded it because of VAR? Now, I immediately get to my thumbs working and send out a tweet that says as much, in that it's still subjective ultimately. Okay, this isn't a over the goal line or not over the goal line. This isn't a offside type of thing. This is was it a foul or not? Absolutely, in my mind, it was a foul. And yet, to your point, these are human beings that are making this call. And then these are human beings also that are in the VAR booth looking at it. And in that moment, there would have probably had to have been protruding bone for that call to be made. Now, is that fair? Is that right? As I said in the tweet, grow up, okay? Soccer isn't fair. And life isn't fair. Although I will say that soccer is more fair more often than life, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's fair. And this is where it's interesting, because the last thing I said in that tweet was VAR, READ, the room. And people took it different ways. The way that I was writing it was VAR read the room. Okay. Other people took it as VAR read the room. Regardless, what I was saying there was VAR looked at the situation, recognized what they were going to have to do, and go down and change this in this type of environment, and felt that there was enough subjectivity in that moment where they would be okay not giving it. I will say this, Merritt Paulson, who I love to death, I think he's one of the great owners in Major League Soccer, and I think he is a needed type of character and personality, and we don't see that a lot from most owners around the world, and certainly not in Major League Soccer. And he's out there; he fights for his team, whether it's on social media or in person or anywhere else. And that's somebody that you want on your side if you are Portland. He would have been going crazy. He would have been whine tweeting this type of moment and screaming and yelling about and taking such umbrage and about the injustice of this moment, if it had been and occurred and happened against his team. But he's not going to do that in that moment. You take it, you move on. But the soccer gods also know, and that it ultimately worked out, if you will, for NYCFC. In that moment, they felt aggrieved, but ultimately they won the game. The soccer gods, they don't always do it, but in this case, they saw some justice ultimately, because yes, it was a foul.
And you are damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if they had wiped away that goal, I guarantee you the narrative would have been, oh, there you go, VAR ruining this dramatic moment. Why can't they just let the players decide the game instead of, over officiating it? And I do think, generally speaking, in MLS, they don't like to wipe away dramatic goals. And so they really lean on that clear and obvious thing, sometimes to a bit of an exaggerated degree. I mean, I much prefer the way MLS does VAR than the Premier League, but the answer is probably somewhere in between, where I think they are a little bit lax in their application of it in MLS. And I think you saw that there, because I agree with you. I do think that was a foul.
So you want it to be less clear and obvious? You think MLS makes it the standard of clear and obvious much higher than others?
Yeah.
Okay.
I often see calls MLS that I think do need to be overturned, and they're not. And then they say afterwards, well, it wasn't totally clear and obvious. That right. Threshold to me is a little bit too high in MLS. Now I prefer that to the Premier League, where they overturn it based on, minuscule evidence sometimes. So I think MLS is erring on the more correct side of it, but they can go a little too far in that direction as well. Well, which, by the way, it's sort of the American sports culture, because if you watch NFL, the original call is very significant, because it's an incredibly high threshold to ever overturn a decision. It has to be, that whole notion has to be clear evidence that the call was wrong. They really hold that to an incredibly high threshold.
Well, ultimately this went to penalties, like we said, and ultimately NYCFC won. The hero, I guess, if you will, Sean Johnson, longtime goalkeeper in Major League Soccer and longtime goalkeeper for NYCFC, makes some big saves, and the Pigeons are your MLS Cup champions. Ronny Deila, the head coach of NYCFC, who in the past has celebrated his victories, his championships, by disrobing and taking off his clothes, had promised his team if they won, he would do it again. And right there in Portland, in front of the traveling NYCFC supporters that were there, he lived up to his promise and took off his shirt, took off his pants, ended up doing some push-ups for everybody. It was a sight to see. And the celebrations, I'm sure, continued when it comes to NYCFC.
You mentioned the shootout. Spare a thought for Diego Valeri, because I thought his penalty was much more well taken than some of the ones that went in, like Castellanos and Thales Magno. There was nothing wrong with that Valeri penalty. That was an incredible save by Sean Johnson. So all credit to him on that one.
Okay, so NYCFC, your 2021 MLS Cup champions. They bring it back to New York. I was just going back and forth with someone on Twitter who was lamenting that the victory was not being celebrated more in traditional media, if you will. Keep in mind too, this is NYCFC. This is a team that's been around for a few years. This is a team that is a professional soccer team playing in the New York metropolitan area. This is a team that lives and breathes in a very congested type of media market, arguably the number one and biggest and most congested media market in the world. This is a team that we've said plays their home games at a baseball stadium, not their own stadium, and even went over to their biggest rival's stadium at times this year. All of that is to say, for someone that's been around like me for a long time, I don't get bent out of shape anymore, because this person was angry that it wasn't on the front page of insert your newspaper. They did get plenty of traction, and there were there was plenty of reporting on this championship, but it's still soccer, and it is a daily, monthly, yearly slog. It's gotten better. It's gotten a whole lot better. But when it comes to especially some of the traditional media out there and legacy types of media, it's not due anyone. They don't have an obligation, or, to be quite honest, an incentive to cover it the way they do other things. One, there's not as many numbers, and so from a business perspective, it's not there. Two, the history just doesn't dictate that. Now, it can and will change over time, and certainly our world right now is very, very different. And you could argue who even reads newspapers anymore, but still, and maybe even more so in New York, that was kind of built around that newspaper type of tradition, wanting to see that moment on the front cover or the back cover, as the case may be, when it comes to sports and what it says relative to how relevant you are. People still get bent out of shape by that. But you know what? This is a long-term type of process, and you get back and you start working. NYCFC, congratulations on winning MLS winning MLS Cup. We'll see if this changes anything. I don't necessarily think that it changes anything, but they got to get themselves a stadium. They know that is a problem right now. Go ahead, Mosse.
Where are they on your MLS Super Club scale? It's New York. They're linked to Manchester City. They have the most points in the league since 2016. They just won MLS Cup. But as you mentioned, the stadium situation and the fact that, while they had guys like David Villa, Andrea Pirlo, Frank Lampard in past seasons, this iteration of NYCFC, while they have very, very good players, doesn't have that big global superstar. So does that undercut the notion that they are a super club, or you would still put them right up there?
I think that the stadium situation is a real problem. I think that you have to have your own home. I think it is a declaration of intent and ambition that if you don't have it, I think you suffer in terms of my assessment of super clubs out there. So I wouldn't put them in the super club status. The star thing, it matters if they're not being successful, but they are being successful. And I think that they're spending wisely. And I do think that they are resonating in that market, but yeah, not super club yet for the pigeons. And there's still part of me that worries that they'll never be that, because they will always be that satellite of the quote unquote bigger club. And if they can do it and still win championships, I guess that's great. But there's some part of me that when it comes to Red Bulls, when it comes to NYCFC, that always is going to look at it as like, as good as they are, think of what they could be if they were the singular priority and focus of, these owners and the money behind it.
They do have to settle on a nickname, because in my timeline on Twitter, I saw Blues, I saw Citizens, I saw Pigeons. You seem to prefer Pigeons, but you see these other names out there.
Yeah, I think they should lean into the Pigeons. I think that is an awesome nickname. But what are they going to do? And
lastly, for me, you mentioned the Red Bulls. A lot of people throwing this championship in the face of Red Bulls fans. And I told you these people are out there. I saw people on Twitter telling you, well, the Red Bulls have won the Supporters Shield. That has more value than winning MLS Cup. What say you to those people?
Show me a team, all right, that says that the Supporters Shield is more valuable, and I'll show you a team that is bombed out of the playoffs. So yeah, you can rest your hat on the Supporters Shield, but nobody cares. The only thing that matters is that money shot and that confetti and that song playing after MLS Cup. That's what this league is about. You can scream and yell about it. You can whine about it. You can complain that it's not fair and all those different things, but it doesn't change the fact that MLS is always, it always has been, and certainly continues to be. And until something changes dramatically, but I don't think it should. But if something were to change dramatically, it is still going forward going to be about MLS Cup. And so, if Red Bull or Red Bull fans are talking about that, it's weak. It's weak. Just give them their due. Give the Pigeons their due. And look, the next season is right around the corner, even quicker than we've ever had it. So you're going to be right back at it sooner than you think. Anything else on an MLS Cup, Mosse?
No, we can move on.
All right. So, as I mentioned, being here in Qatar and coming back in a few days, and I also mentioned I had been to the Arab Cup to watch Qatar play, which we are broadcasting on Fox. I'm coming back across the world, and then I will be broadcasting in one day the final of the Arab Cup with all of my colleagues at Fox. So I'm going across the world to broadcast a tournament that right now is in my backyard here. But that's neither here nor there because it's a full day. So after the Arab Cup, during that day, we will also be broadcasting the final men's national team game, a game against Bosnia and Herzegovina. That's happening in Los Angeles. So that'll be a fun day. And this is a really interesting game, mostly because of the roster. Now we know most of the players and a lot of the starting players will not be part of this. And so this is another opportunity for Greg Berhalter and staff to look at a lot of these different players. Some usual suspects in the form of, for example, Matt Turner from the New England Revolution, in goal, or Jossie Zardes up top. What sticks out to you, Mosse? Because for me, when I go through this, and by the way, a couple of players even from USL, so I think Greg Berhalter is scouring and giving opportunities to players to come into the camp and say, hey, I'm worth a second look. So, if you're looking at, I don't know, Jonathan Gomez from Louisville City or Kobe Henry from Orange County, then some names that we've seen before in George Bello and those types of things. But then let's see, Brian Reynolds, who is not playing, and which is why he would be released over there from Roma to get a game. So I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but Walker Zimmerman's back in camp, and obviously MLS being over now, it's heavily populated by MLS players. Jesus Ferreira and obviously Ricardo Pepi from a forward perspective are there. We've seen Caden Clark and Cade Cowell as potential players going forward. Your friend Johnny Cardoso, who was not very impressive with the national team over this summer, gets another chance. The Brazilian playing over there at the Internacional gets another chance back in. Who stands out to you in terms of these players, Mosse?
Well, you mentioned Jonathan Gomez. He is the subject of a tug of war between the U.S. and Mexico. So we have another one of those cases. And then the forwards are very tasty to me when you have Pepi and Jesus Ferreira, as you mentioned, Cade Cowell, Caden Clark, and the most interesting name for me in some ways is Jordan Morris back in the mix, and I'm curious to see how he looks.
Yeah, so it'll be fun. We'll be back doing that game, and like you said, we'll see some of these players that will be involved going forward with qualifying, which starts up again at the end of January, the beginning of February with that next window. Keep in mind, the U.S. has 6 games remaining. They sit in second place. Top 3 automatically go. So they're sitting pretty right now, but they do have an interesting next 6 games, including going away to Mexico and away to Canada. So that'll be fun. We'll see if any of these players, whether you mentioned like Jordan Morris, get back with the team, or maybe some young players really start to turn some heads and do some good things where they get an invite come that window. It would not surprise me. I think that Greg Berhalter and his staff have actually been very, very open to making opportunities available regardless of age or experience. And you just got to get your foot in the door, and you have to get in front of these people and prove that there is something there. And sometimes all it takes is a few training sessions and maybe a good run against Bosnia Herzegovina, and things can happen. So we'll see who emerges from that. Anything else, Mosse? By the way, that game is Saturday, December 18th on FS1 at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Myself and Stu and Rob and John Strong, everybody, the usual suspects, will be involved for that as we finish out the U.S. men's national team year that is 2021. By the way, a very successful year when it comes to that. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, we're going to take a real quick break. When we come back, we will take a trip around the world. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back. Real quick trip here, Mosse, around the world, because there was all sorts of soccer going on. I mean, in my hotel room here in Qatar, I'm getting soccer from all over the places, and there's like multiple levels of leagues and leagues that I've never, ever seen before. They love their soccer over here in the Middle East, and they certainly love it over here in Qatar with the World Cup coming. So there's plenty of soccer for me to watch. You want to start over there in the Premier League?
Yeah, and the only thing I'm going to say about England this week, and this relates to the conversation we just had about officiating in MLS Cup, is that Chelsea, Manchester City, Liverpool, and Manchester United all notched 1-goal victories this weekend, and the game winner was off a penalty. And that's led to this outcry that the Premier League has a Big Six refereeing bias problem. Now, to be honest, in reviewing the plays, the only one I had a big issue with was the Chelsea one against Leeds. Frankly, I didn't love either penalty that Chelsea was awarded in that game. Antonio Rudiger earning both. But the other ones I thought were okay. So I don't know. I think people are really inventing a story there. But I mean, what do you think? Watching the Premier League week in and week out, do you feel like those big glamorous teams do get too much of a break when it comes to officiating?
No, but I have no problem with it. The elites getting a break, that applies to much in life. Is it fair? No, again, but life isn't fair and soccer isn't fair. And look, if you're going to whine and complain after being pummeled oftentimes and maybe having very little of the ball and defending against an obviously superior team, you can't then be surprised when there is a close call, that it goes to the team that is more dominant, that is bigger, that is more elite. That is part of human nature, and that is part of what goes on. In the same way, you know about basketball in the same way, and I think you mentioned it. Jordan got fouls, and big players get the benefit of the doubt, and big players get calls that go their way. Why? Because they're big players, and there is a focus, and there is an energy, and there is a power that surrounds them, and they know it. They leverage it oftentimes. So yeah, I don't have a problem with the way that VAR is necessarily being used. And to your point, it's used differently in different leagues, but it shouldn't surprise you, me, or anybody that the elites are finding penalties late in games. And ultimately, if those are the winners, I think it's justifiable in that this is not a game of robots. By the way, when on a side, speaking of robots, when they race camels, they use robot jockeys on the backs of them. So, the robots are coming in more ways than one. And if and when that happens in our game, maybe it'll be a little bit easier to take out that human element. But it'll be a sad day, unfortunately, because I think that human element that absolutely can be frustrating and brings in that romance and that bias and that history and that baggage that can cloud judgment. And especially when it comes to subjective calls, can sway things this way and that. Part of that humanity is what I love about sports, and including our game. All right, what else, Mosse?
In Spain, I'm ready to proclaim the La Liga race over. I mentioned last week that this Real Madrid-Atletico Madrid game was a match point for Atletico. Real Madrid won 2-0, goals by Benzema and Asensio, both assisted by Vinicius. I know that Sevilla and Betis are closer to Real Madrid in the table than Atletico, but I feel like Atletico is the only legitimate threat to Real Madrid winning the title, and it's now a 13-point gap between those teams. I mean, Barcelona, forget about it. They drew against Osasuna, and they're now 18 points back, so I don't even view them in that context. Barring something crazy here, I really do think La Liga is over for the season. Real Madrid is going to win it. And, this was sort of a quintessential Real Madrid victory from this season, in that even with those three great midfielders, Casemiro, Modric, and Cruz, they don't dominate games to the degree that you think they would. They sit back deep, they absorb pressure, they give away chances, and they try to hit you on the counter. And it's worked because at one end, Courtois has been absolutely lights out. He's been the best goalkeeper in the world this season. And at the other end, Vinicius and Benzema are able to conjure up goals. So it makes for some awkward viewing at times, because you kind of feel like the results are better than the performances, but the formula is clearly working for them. And they pick up 3 points here. The only thing I'll say about Atletico is they brought on João Felix at halftime. I always, how there are certain players that you seem to always catch on their bad days. Everybody says they're good, and you catch them on their bad days. João Felix is the other extreme for me. All I read about in the Spanish media is how badly he's struggling. Every time I watch that team play, he's the best player on the field. And he came on at halftime and gave him a real spark and was terrific in the second half. And I just don't understand the problem there. That kid, to me, is so talented, and they got to get more out of him, or let him go on his way and go somewhere else where he can become the star that he should be. I love João Felix, but he's not. But he's not that star yet. And I think that the time that it is taking for him to be that star and fulfill the expectations, and maybe unrealistic expectations, but I mean, this was a wonder kid. This was somebody that we all looked at as the next one, the next great one. And who knows? I mean, look, there's still a lot to be played. Maybe to your point, he needs a change of scenery to really be who he can be and who we want him to be. When it comes to, let's finish it up with Barcelona. Got knocked out of Champions League group stage. We know that this is not your father's Barcelona. This is a very, very different type of Barcelona. But my question, I guess, is with Xavi coming in and being the chosen one, and it's always been written in the stars that he was going to come back, right? But is this fair to Koeman, that the team has certainly not improved? You could even argue it's
regressed even more. And maybe Xavi would argue that, we're taking a step back in order to go 2 steps forward. And this is a long-term process. That's all fine and well. But is he just a caretaker until the end of the season, and whatever happens, and we really won't judge him until next year? Or is it fair to judge him right now?
Yeah, I never thought this was Ronald Koeman's fault. That was just about the new president, Laporta, wanting to bring in his own guy and just get this Xavi era running, because it's been, for the last couple of years, it's been sort of a given that he's going to take over eventually. So might as well just do that now. And yeah, it's such a depressing season for them that it's hard to draw any conclusions about Xavi as a manager. The interesting thing about Barcelona is that, they don't want to sell anybody good, because they feel like, boy, we're already a bad team. And then if you're going to take off any of our good players, we're going to be in even more trouble. But the reality is they're never going to get out from this financial situation they're in unless they sell somebody good that can actually bring back some money. So you keep reading about, they're going to try to remedy the financial situation by unloading Coutinho and Samuel Umtiti. Well, I mean, how much money are you going to get for those guys? It's going to have to be, I hate to say it, perhaps a Pedri, a Gavi, an Ansu Fati, somebody like that brings back, 100 million euros. And then maybe you can sort of turn the tide financially there. Even Frankie de Jong, I wonder what his value is at this point. So, it's a weird spiral there where they can't afford to get rid of any of their good players, but without doing that, they're never going to be able to get out of this financial hole they're in. So,
and the market is limited. When you're talking about really good players out there, and they were kind of the teams that others were doing this to now, and yet they've become. And by the way, the same thing is happening with Juventus. I was just reading earlier that Weston McKennie, who is, at times has been rumored leaving, but to satisfy the economic part of it and the dire straits that Juventus is. And so it's not that he's not good when we're talking about Weston McKennie or anybody else, but these are some big clubs. These are super clubs that have gotten themselves in financial hardship, and they're trying to get out of it and are selling players in the way that others have done before and that they would have been buying. And so it's a very strange type of moment for some of these clubs. Bundesliga, Mosse?
On the American front, Chris Richards scored a stoppage time winner for Hoffenheim against Freiburg.
There we go.
Bayern beat Mainz and Dortmund drew Bochum, so the gap is now back up to 6. So much for that.
We do this all the time. By the way, congratulations to Chris Richards. That's his first Bundesliga goal of his career, and it couldn't have come a better time. And we do this every single year when it comes to the Bundesliga. And is there going to be anybody challenging? We know Red Bull isn't happening, and now Dortmund, tying Bochum, and they got to keep up. So yeah, the race is over.
I believe that's Eric Ronaldo's former club, Bochum. Inter have soared to the top of the Serie A standings thanks to a 4-0 win over Cagliari. It's now Inter 1, Milan 2, Atalanta 3, and then Napoli, who lost to Empoli, have dropped to 4th. Also in Serie A, Fiorentina beat Salernitana 4-0. 2 more goals for Dusan Vlahovic. More on him when we get to the Ask Alexi segment. That's a little bit of a tease there. And then finally in France, PSG beat Monaco 2-0. Mbappe with 2 goals against his former club. He's really carrying PSG offensively this season. He's the one of that big 3 that's kind of holding up his end of the bargain. Yeah,
they're coming down here actually. They were telling us that PSG is going to be coming down to do a training camp here in a few weeks down here in Qatar. Should we hit that Champions League draw? Because that was that was something interesting.
Absolutely surreal for anybody that missed it. They held a draw, and as they were doing it, they came to realize that there was a technical glitch, and teams that shouldn't have been eligible to face each other were showing up as potential opponents for each other. So once they got done, they determined that, we need to scrap this draw and start from scratch and do a whole different one, which they did. So we threw up a different set of matchups. I don't want to, it is what it is. So I don't want to look at it through the prism of, they should have been playing this team instead of they're playing that team. But the one that is worth mentioning, which was interesting, is originally PSG had drawn Manchester United. So we were going to get Messi against Ronaldo. And instead, when they redid the draw, PSG got Real Madrid, which is also very tasty. You've got the Mbappe storyline, Sergio Ramos, if he's fit, going back there. Obviously, Messi playing against Real Madrid again. So that's great. But yeah, we were for an hour or two there. We were teased with the fact that it was going to be Messi against Ronaldo. So I don't know which would you prefer, PSG Manchester United or PSG Real Madrid?
PSG Manchester United. Yeah,
No.
I prefer that, but we're not going to get that. And look, I think this is a mountain out of a molehill. Was it a good look? No, you had one job, right, and you screwed it up, and you knew you were going to get crap from everybody, and you're going to get crap. Although, did you see Arshavin? Was one of the guest pickers, if you will. Riveting stuff, by the way, from him. So as much of him that we can have, it's great. But yeah, it was not a good look. But you made a mistake, and they owned it. They recognized they made a mistake. They fixed it. It'll move on in the world.
And obviously, the teams that got much tougher opponents the second time around are annoyed, while the teams that got easier opponents the second time around are secretly kind of happy that this transpired. Real Madrid had gotten Benfica originally. They now get PSG. A bit of a difference there. So they didn't make out.
And I'm sure conspiracy theorists among us will point to this or that. And
PSG Real Madrid to me is the glamour tie. It's a 50-50. I know those two big Spanish teams, Real Madrid and Barcelona, they hate PSG. So they're never going to acknowledge that they're worried about facing them. So reading the Madrid media, it's all like, oh, no problem. We're going to take care of business there. PSG are overrated. Everybody sort of grabbed onto this narrative that PSG only defend with 8, that those front 3 don't lift a finger defensively. That's all based on that game they lost away to Manchester City, where the English pundits really leaned into that story and everybody's sort of grabbed onto that. So I don't know. To me, there's, like I said, Real Madrid I don't think are that good, although the results say otherwise, but just watching them, I don't think they're this juggernaut. And PSG has so much talent that to me, that's a 50-50. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. PSG versus Real Madrid. Remember, no away goals. The UEFA did away with that. The second leg is in Madrid. So I don't know, which way do you lean there? PSG, Messi, Neymar, Mbappe and company against Real Madrid, Benzema, Vinicius.
Man, I think I'm going to go with Real Madrid. I do think you convinced me, I think a few weeks ago when it came to PSG, that while one notion is that they are kind of made for Champions League, and that's completely fair. I don't think, in a strange way, this team that we have so often referred to, Galacticos and all that, they're more of a team, if you will. And so maybe
Real Madrid is the team that I keep wrestling with. I think we all acknowledge when you divide teams up into tiers, those 3 big English teams, Chelsea, Liverpool, and City, and Bayern Munich, are in this top tier where they're clear contenders to win it all. Then PSG haven't played like it, but just based on the pedigree of that squad, you could sort of talk me into putting them up there with those other 4. Real Madrid is the one that I can't figure out. Do they belong in that group, or are they the best of the rest? It is Real Madrid. They're the most successful club in the history of the competition. They got to the semifinals last season, and they're better this year. They're running away with La Liga. They finished first in their Champions League group. So there is part of me that feels like I'm not giving them enough respect. They do have a manager, Carlo Ancelotti, that's won this 3 times. Their squad is still littered with players that have won this multiple times. So maybe I do need to give them a little bit more respect. But like I said, it's just because watching them, you never come away with this feeling that this is that great of a team. So we'll see.
Maybe, I'm going to stick with them. I'm going to stick with my Real Madrid. The little engine that is Real Madrid.
The 2 other matchups I think are worth highlighting. Atletico Madrid, who had originally drawn Bayern Munich, by the way, they then ended up facing Manchester United, which I favor United there. Atletico, I know that match day 6 win away to Porto were sort of shades of the old Atletico, that grit and able to, qualify, but it's still, it all is not right there. I think Diego Simeone has almost more talent that he knows what to do with. And I don't like the feel of that team this season. And Ronaldo owns Atletico Madrid. So I think we should say all these matchups are a couple of months from now. So things could change. You have a January transfer market, injuries. So I reserve the right to change my predictions. But if this was right now, I think I would pick Manchester United. How about you?
Okay. Yeah, I would too.
And then the other one that's worth highlighting, Liverpool against Inter Milan. I listened to an Italian soccer podcast this past week, and they were mortified by that AC Milan Liverpool game on match day 6. The big question was, just how big is the gap between the Premier League and Serie A right now? The fact that Liverpool were able to send the B team to the San Siro with nothing to play for and beat an AC Milan team that had everything to play for. So they were really nervous about that. And now we're going to get more evidence of that and of finding out just how big the gap is. And I think it is pretty big. The intensity that Premier League teams play with, these Serie A clubs just struggle to keep up with them. So Inter, I think, are better than AC Milan, so they would put up a better fight there. But ultimately, I see Liverpool moving on there.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be a perfect couple of matches for Inter to be able to do that. Not out of the realm of possibility. And I'm a little bit more bullish than you, but if I had to just put money on it, absolutely, I would put it on Liverpool.
Other than that, the other five, Bayern face Salzburg. To me, that's no chance there. Of course, Done. Bayern. Manchester City face Sporting Lisbon. To me, no chance Done. There. Chelsea, who dropped down to second in the group by only drawing Zenit on match day 6. And you thought, oh, that could really come back to bite them. But they get Lille in the round of 16. So they made out great. Done. So, of course, they're going to move on there. Ajax, I think, will get past Benfica. And then the only other one is Juventus Villarreal, who I lean Juventus, but they're not that good. So it actually would not surprise me in the slightest bit if Villarreal took them out. But, gun to my head, I'd lean Juventus.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Mosse?
And then Luis wants me to mention this only because we've been talking about it the last couple of weeks. Congratulations to Atlas. They did win Liga MX, first league title in 70 years for them. They're that second club in Guadalajara that's often in the shadow of Chivas. So it's a big deal for them to win this. They defeated Leon on penalties in the final, which means my favorite manager, Ariel Holan, comes up short. So, Brazilian journalists have already been tweeting at me, mocking me for, how much I love this guy. But
you should be used to that.
but no. The scenes were incredible. I don't know if you got a chance to see it, but incredible atmosphere in the stadium for that second leg. And they 7 years, that's some Boston Red Sox 2004 stuff right there to end a drought like that. So congratulations to Atlas. I don't know where Luis is. If he had a dog in this fight, I think he's a Cruz Azul fan. So I don't know what that means in terms of Atlas versus Leon. But
he's a romantic, though. He can appreciate the romance. Congratulations, Atlas. All right. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. We're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we'll have our Ask Alexi segment. Don't go anywhere. All right. We're back, and it's time for Ask Alexi. You send in those questions, comments, and concerns out there on the old Twitter machine or Instagram or Facebook, all the different social media platforms. Or if you're so bold, you join us on our voice mailbox, our State of the Union podcast hotline at 657-549-2297. That's 657-549-2297. Okay, I think we have a couple of audio questions to start this off. Mosse, what should we start with first here?
First up, Jonathan from Richmond, Virginia.
Hey, Alexi and Mosse. This is Jonathan from Richmond, Virginia. I was calling in to ask you about your opinion regarding the idea that a team that earns a bye in MLS could choose to take the bye or to not take the bye. I know this presents some logistical issues, but the thought behind it being the team that goes through the season and earns that bye may want to keep it going and keep rolling, or may actually need to take a week off to recover for some injuries, which would make it a true advantage to which they're a little more in control of. And again, I understand the logistical issues that this may cause. So I was curious your thoughts on that. Keep up the good work. Love listening to you guys. And thanks for taking my call.
All right. Interesting question, Jonathan. And this is kind of evergreen. And we go through this almost every year now because MLS is not notorious. That's not fair, but it is certainly well known for changing things over the years. And look, it's trial and error, and this is a work in progress. And the way that MLS plays in terms of the calendar does pose challenges. And with the international break and all that kind of stuff, you have to be able to bob and weave and change. And MLS has concentrated, and rightfully so, on trying to do everything in its power to make the regular season as meaningful as possible and to award teams that are successful in the regular season with as much as possible into the postseason. Unfortunately, what we are getting is it's one thing to have time off to recover mentally and physically from a team, and the advantage of not having to play a game while everybody else is having to travel and play games is obvious. But there comes a certain point where that rust is problematic. And so to his point, Jonathan there from Richmond, asking if you would give teams the choice of either playing or not playing. It would be very interesting if you had gone to Bruce Arena, and hindsight, I guess, is 2020, but if you had gone to him before the playoffs and said, you are the Supporters' Shield winner, would you rather play this game or have the 23 days that they had off? And what he would say. I don't think that you can be that flexible, to be quite honest, to be able to do that kind of stuff. I think you have to either do it or don't. But in the moment, having teams pick, I don't know. I think that'd be hard. I think that'd be hard to do. He asked, he wanted to know whether this new system would become just another thing to point to as an excuse for not winning MLS Cup. Yeah, I'm convinced that if you are the Supporters' Shield winner, regardless of what the rules are and whatever advantages you have or whatever disadvantages you may perceive to have, people are going to that then bomb out in the playoffs or don't go on to parlay it into MLS Cup. The Supporters' Shield are going to say this is wrong and you should have this. So I don't think we're ever going to get it right unless the Supporters' Shield winner then parlays and goes on and wins MLS Cup. Then it was perfect. And that was the best and the most ideal way to do it. But you're always going to look for excuses. Do you think this thing has any legs? What Jonathan is suggesting here, having teams choose? I don't know
how that would work logistically, because that would affect how many teams make the playoffs, correct? So, right. I mean, what if the Supporters' Shield was only decided on decision day? We would go into decision day not knowing exactly what the playoff format would be. That seems odd to me. So
yeah, I mean, and then but once again, you play the regular season, and part of the advantage is having that home game. And now we have these one-off games. Well, you're playing at home, and we've seen that isn't necessarily always an advantage in terms of the results that we have seen. But if you have your druthers, yeah, you're going to want to play at home, and there is an inherent advantage, and statistics back it up in terms of the advantage of playing at home. And so having that, because of the work that you have done in the regular season, I think is good and should continue. You just got to find different ways to award, and in doing so, make that regular season as meaningful as possible. All right, what else, Mosse? Who's next?
Another audio question. This one, Mark from Fresno, California.
Hi, this is Mark. I'm calling from Fresno in Central California. Really enjoy the podcast, especially David Mosse's, how he articulates some insightful thoughts to his point of view. My heritage is Italian. My parents are from the Tuscany region of Italy, and so consequently I've been a Fiorentina fan for a while. And they have a phenomenal young talent in Serbian Dusan Vlahovic. And a lot has been said about Erling Haaland, and I was just kind of wondering what your thoughts about Vlahovic. He's having a phenomenal year this year on course for 30-plus goals in Serie A. And clearly, or probably more certainly, Fiorentina is going to sell them off, and which is too bad because they're having such a good year and a potential for some European tournaments or something like that, and they'll probably just consequently just become a mediocre team like they've always been. But just thought I'd like to hear what you guys had to say. As always, enjoy the podcast, and as Mosse would say, that's it.
Oh, interesting, Mark. And I think this one I think he's really excited to hear your answer about this, Mosse. So I'm going to let you take this because I certainly don't know a whole lot about the play.
Well, amazingly enough, I was planning to do a Dusan Vlahovic spiel this week on the podcast in the context of talking about Erling Haaland. So Mark read my mind. So I'm ready to go on this because I was kind of planning to do it anyway. And yeah, all right, do it. Let's start with the Erling Haaland bit first, because his agent, Mino Raiola, made big news last week. He came out and said that Haaland probably is going to leave Dortmund this summer, and that they've narrowed it down to 4 teams he's going to go to: Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, or Manchester City. So just to unpack that for a minute, there's a lot of Real Madrid buzz, and you can never discount the allure of that team. It's the biggest club in the world, but Karim Benzema is not going anywhere. So I wonder how that would work. I mean, you have Real Madrid fans actually saying, well, Haaland would go there to sit behind Benzema for a couple of years and learn. Erling Haaland is way overqualified for that. He's not going anywhere to be a backup for the next couple of years. So that's ridiculous to me. So I'm not sure how Real Madrid works from a depth chart standpoint. Bayern Munich, I get it. Lewandowski's making noises about how he might want to leave and try something different. His contract is close to running out. So the idea would be they get rid of Lewandowski. They bring Haaland as a replacement. Lewandowski, of course, went from Dortmund to Bayern. So I could see that, but I don't know. There'd be something weirdly underwhelming about that to me if Haaland's big move was just to go from Dortmund to Bayern and to stay in the Bundesliga. So I wouldn't discount that one, but I don't love it. Barcelona, A, I have no idea how they could afford him. And B, there's a pretty good chance they're not even going to be in the Champions League next season, which I would think would be discard them. I will say, in a world in which they could afford him and they did get into the Champions League next season, from a footballing standpoint, I don't hate it because he would go there to be the savior. It would all be built around him. And, so maybe that has some appeal to him to be the guy that sort of revives this great club. But I've poked holes into the other three. So you kind of see where I'm going with this. I think Manchester City makes the most sense. He shouldn't overthink this. I know they've gotten used to playing without a center forward, so it'd be a bit of an adjustment the other way, but man, if they can figure it out, imagine taking that Manchester City team as good as they are right now and plopping Erling Haaland, the one position where they don't have a guy, and you add Erling Haaland to the mix. To me, that would just be frightening. So to me, that's the logical destination. Do you agree? Of those four, he said.
Yeah, I mean, is it by choice and by design that they don't have someone like that at Man City? Maybe. I mean, I'm sure Pep would argue that, but given the opportunity, not just to have somebody actually play that position, but to have arguably, even right now, one of the best in the world to be able to come in. I mean, I think that fundamentally changes your team. Yes, it fundamentally changes the way that you play, but I think only in a good way.
But so the interesting thing is whoever is jonesing to sign a young striker this upcoming summer and doesn't get Erling Haaland, there's a very good plan B out there, which is this Dusan Vlahovic, who Mark mentioned, who I love. He's a 21-year-old Serbian. He's going to be in the World Cup in Qatar, where you are right now, because Serbia, you might recall, qualified by beating Portugal in that last game, which sent Portugal into the playoffs. And Vlahovic has had great success with Fiorentina. He was among the leading scorers in Serie A last season with 21 goals. He's the leading scorer so far this season with 15 in 17 games. Now, Fiorentina have this tough-talking Italian-American owner, Rocco Camiso, who's promising to drive a hard bargain, and it's going to take a lot of money to get him out of Fiorentina. But still, I think they are going to sell him this upcoming summer, and he is a phenomenal player. I love him. So, Mark, I'm with you. I think he's terrific. And so whichever team doesn't get a Haaland, I think if you sign Vlahovic, you've done very well for yourself also. And by the way, Mark, Fiorentina is a club I have a soft spot for. I actually studied abroad in Florence. I lived there for 4 months. I attended some Fiorentina games at the Artemio Franchi Stadium. Bought my dad a Rui Costa jersey. He was one of his favorite players. I love that Fiorentina team with Batistuta, Edmundo, and Rui Costa. And so I've always loved that club, that city, as a history buff and art buff that I am. I actually went back there a couple of years ago when we covered the Women's World Cup in Paris. Afterwards, I traveled around Italy and I went to Florence and visited Ponte Vecchio, Palazzo Vecchio, Palazzo Pitti, Boboli Gardens, the Uffizi, the Duomo, all of it. So I love it. So there you have it. Firenze, bella città.
Oh, it's wonderful. You mentioned Batistuta. So Batistuta was on a roll. He had scored every single game that he had played in. And my team in Italy was then coming up against him. So I think I've told you this before, I was hell-bent on marking him out of the game. And I had done a good job. And they ended up getting a penalty. And he ended up stepping up and taking it. And you know my thoughts on penalties, and the separate column that they should be. And I felt cheated in that I had kept him quiet and that he was able to continue that streak of scoring every game, but it was on a penalty that he didn't even earn, that I didn't cause, and that he stepped up and took. So that's my Fiorentina story. Okay. I think we have a Twitter question though, too.
We'll end with a fun one. At Oldman Marks asks, Alexi, did you ever get into any soccer video games? If so, what's your favorite?
I never was into any soccer video games. I was never into any video games. I mean, I came about in the Atari and Intellivision era, and even as far back as playing Pong and that kind of stuff. But it didn't take the way that it does to some, and I wasn't part of that culture. It bored me, and it moored me, if you will. I didn't like to be nailed down sitting on a couch doing that kind of stuff. My experience when it comes to video games and being a part of them from a soccer perspective, like I said, I didn't grow up playing FIFA. The first video game I was involved with we actually did a video game that I licensed out, and I think it was called Alexi Lalas Red Hot Soccer out there. I don't even know if you can find it. I don't even know what platform it worked on or works on at this point, but that was out there. I think I still have a few copies of that. Then, as he mentioned, the cover of the FIFA game in 1995. How that comes about, I don't know. I think they just call you up and say, hey, we have this really cool picture of you, and we're going to use it on the cover, and we're going to pay you some money and stuff like that, and maybe give you some games. But since I wasn't a big part of it, it's not that I didn't appreciate what FIFA, the game, was. It's just that I didn't play a whole lot of that. And then a few years ago, there was a point where I was involved in the FIFA game as a Legends. I had a Legends card, and they had to explain what that was. I don't think that necessarily exists anymore. So I have been very much on the periphery when it comes to the video game culture, whether it's FIFA and soccer video games or just video games in general. Unlike my son, who was heavily into them. And I don't know if there's others out there that have had this phenomenon experience over the last couple of years, obviously with COVID, and especially when it comes to kids and the Zoom type of culture that has existed because you've been home and being Zoom schooled and not being able to go and socialize. It became a part of their socialization progress and evolution. And they put on these kids put on their headsets, and they got their microphones, and they're screaming and yelling and going back and forth and socializing through the video game. And so while in a normal instance I would say, no, you're not playing video games, I recognized in this strange moment in history that we were living in, it was actually a way for them to interact. And while it's not perfect, and it's not human to human in the traditional sense, at least they were getting some sort of socialization using this video game. And so if there is a good to come out of it, as far as I'm concerned, that's what I was looking at it like. And that's my video games story. What do you got, Mosse?
I should have read, there was a follow-up question at Uncle Tony B89. Alexi, how'd you get the cover of FIFA 95?
Yeah, like I said, I can't remember how that all came about, but there I was, and it wasn't lost on me what video games are and what they can be, but like I said, I would have always much rather been playing a guitar or writing a song or going out with people and having a good time, as opposed, and like, I'm not saying you can't sit and have a good time playing video games, and many people do. It passed me, or it was just never a part of my routine. All right. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
Well, thank you for all the questions that you have sent in, whether it's in the more traditional way, I guess, when it comes to a Twitter question or Instagram or Facebook or anything like that, or our audio line out there when it comes to the podcast hotline. Once again, that's 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297. And I love when people do it. It gives you a little bit more space and a chance to breathe and expound upon what you want to talk about. And we get to hear in your voice a little bit more about what you're about, those people that are listening to the State of the Union. All right, we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we got the end of the show, and I'll give you my one for the road. Okay, we're back, and again, I am here in Doha, Qatar, scene and site and location of next year's Men's World Cup in November and December. And so, yeah, as Mosse, as I was thinking, and we travel around in these these types of evergreen conversations. And you and I both know that when it comes to what resonates out there, you can't go wrong with Messi and Ronaldo. We've already talked about them, and it's amazing how they always come up and have now for over a decade. That's how important they have been individually and certainly connected in the competition that they have. But even now, we have conversations with Qataris, and we could be out at the falconry location watching falcons, and they will liken this falcon to Messi or this one to Ronaldo, or we'll have that evergreen conversation of Messi or Ronaldo. And one Qatari will come in hot and heavy for Messi, and then the next thing you know, you got this guy over here coming in for Ronaldo. And it shows you, one, the global impact that these two legends and superstars and arguably greatest ever to play the game have had, especially in this day and age of the dissemination of information and at your fingertips, being able to see and enjoy these great players. And it remains to be seen whether we are going to see them on the ultimate stage next year, because as you mentioned earlier, Portugal still is not assured to go to the World Cup. We shall see. Obviously, Messi and his Argentina have already qualified, but Portugal still has some work to do. I would think, safe money is that it will, if they are both there, be their last World Cups. But you never put it past either one of them, and it'll be fun to see. But as I think about, you mentioned Erling Haaland and stuff like that, as I think about these two in the twilight of their careers and what they are going to be and what the sport is going to look like if and when they are gone, either together or one at a time over the next few years, not necessarily what they do, although that is interesting to me, but what the sport becomes and who fills those shoes going forward. And can you? Is it done by two people, or is it done by multiple people and more of a committee? Is it people that we're already talking about right now, or do others rise to the fore and give us that legendary type of status that has, driven so many conversations and continues to do so, like I said, in all, corners of the earth and by so many people out there. And it's fun to see how much it permeates through everything and everybody out there. And there's no right answer. When it comes to the question of which one is better and which one would you want. I was at a dinner last night, and again, that question came up, and you would be surprised. No, I guess you wouldn't be surprised, but the passion and the emotion that it evokes when people are defending their side, Messi or Ronaldo, and they are such different types of superstars, and yet both resonate. And the fierceness in which they are protected and defended by each side is also really, really fun to see. And again, I saw it here in Qatar, and it will continue on, and maybe we'll get a chance to see them again in a World Cup together come next November and December here in Doha, Qatar. Mosse, anything before we go?
Yes. Congratulations to Max Verstappen, who captured the Formula One title. This was a big sports story over the weekend. Going on in your part of the world, it was in Abu Dhabi was the last race, and very controversial. I don't know enough about Formula One, to be honest, to tell you if it was the right or wrong to say. I'm not even going to wade into that, but I know people had strong opinions on that both ways. But nevertheless, after watching that Netflix documentary, Drive to Survive, it's really gotten me back into Formula One. And I know a lot of people feel the same way. I've read stories about how it's one of the most successful sports documentaries ever in terms of boosting the profile of a sport. And so there was more attention this season than I think ever before for in a very long time. And it came down to the very last race, the very last lap of the very last race, one of the most dramatic endings ever. And Max Verstappen wins it over Lewis Hamilton. Did that hit your radar? I mean, was that big news there?
At dinner last night, people were talking about it, and it was amazing how into it they were, and it lended itself, like you said, because of the drama that was going on, and there was a the pace car and the accident car or whatever, and you can't pass at that moment. And so there was all of this strategy as to what should have happened or what did happen, and then these two fighting it out to the end, that I think at some point are going to be teammates in the future and stuff like that. So anyway, there's all sorts of stuff that's going on. But congratulations, Max, ultimately on winning that. They love their Formula One over here in the Middle East. My goodness, they go crazy for it. Yep. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, I will be back in the fold in Los Angeles next week for the show and give you a little recap of how this finishes up over here in Qatar. So I will see you, my friend, and Luis and the whole crew over there next week. Again, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for downloading and reviewing and writing, and, sending in your questions and doing all that kind of stuff. Did you have something else to say, Mosse?
No, that's it.
Oh, so it looked like you were,
you interpreted my body language wrong.
I did. I'm always looking at you, and I don't want to shortchange you because, as we've seen, people want to hear what you have to say. And so I would never want to cut you off because
incidentally, you mentioned you'll be back in LA for our next podcast. I will be down in Florida, which is where I'm headed to spend some time with my parents, and a trip that will include attending the Orange Bowl, Michigan, Georgia. So more on that in the coming weeks. Nice. All right, my friend. I'll see you in a few days. All right. Thank you. And as always, size the day.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.